up, y'all? This is Nina Perez, and this is Straight Talk, No Sugar Added. I am so stoked that you are here because I go around this amazing planet finding the best humans I can find to come on here to grow, challenge, and transform your thinking. So today I found Kevin, y'all. Say hi to Kevin. Kevin Hannigan is the Chief Learning Officer at Qlik. Kevin's passion is the intersection of business, technology, learning, and psychology. And he frequently speaks and writes on topics of data informed decision making and the future of learning and the growth mindset. Now, you guys know that we're always talking about mindset and growth and business and all this great stuff. So, Kevin, you are right here with the people. These are your people, Kevin. How are
Perfect.
you today? How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing? I'm a pleasure to be here. And
Good.
this is how I like my coffee too. Straight with no sugar. So perfect.
Right. This is going to be great then. So, Kevin, the way I like to start is I like to let my audience know a little bit more about you because one thing I got to say about my audience is that I really try to build community. And so they're
Mhm.
really great at like connecting and following the people that are on the show and things like that. So, I want them to know who Kevin is. So, who is Kevin?
Absolutely. Loaded question. I'll start by saying I'm a father of four. And they actually
Cool.
teach me quite a bit. A couple of them have special needs, mental health issues, and that's interesting enough put me on my journey to where I'm here today. So undergraduate, I was a tech geek, computer science and math, love data, love analytics, love programming. But I was starting to realize as I went into the workforce, we sometimes lose some of the skills that we inherently have kids like being curious and asking why, and
Mhm.
sometimes it's
Mhm.
just the culture of companies suppress those, and it's leading to where now everyone's overloaded with information they see, even in an individual setting, or you see something on the news and it's hard to process, and it's because we've kind of, I wouldn't say we've regressed, but we don't use those soft skills anymore. So my kids, especially the ones with special needs, kind of taught me, hey, it's good to get diverse perspectives. Hey, two different people can see the same problem differently. They're not right or wrong. They're just different. And the more that
Right.
you learn about the differences, the more you're going to innovate. And I started applying it to my job. I'm like, you know what? There's like this holy grail here that's sitting in front of us, but we all think technology and automation is going to make things better. It's
Right.
actually making it hurt or less because we're forgetting the human element.
Yeah. And we are, right? I mean, just in the learning process alone, right, Kevin? Like, I used to be able to do, like math problems pretty quickly in my head, or used to, remember phone numbers like at the back of my hand. And it was no issue. I don't have that skill anymore. Like, I forget people's numbers right away. I'm using my calculator now, or I'm asking Siri or something, right? And so I see what you're talking about. And I think that's a real thing, right? So, what was it that you learned from was it your son or daughter, or how
Son,
did that
absolutely.
your son, how did that come about? Was there something that was happening and it just
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
so they have autism and they also have
Mm,
borderline personality. If you know anything about those, they just from an autism perspective, they see the world very black and white and very rigid.
mhm,
And
yeah,
as I was, as they were younger, I was a math major, so I saw it. Right, 2 plus 2 is always 4. But
mhm,
then, as they got into puberty, they would make decisions that just I'm like, where did that come from? But then I would stop and like part of the therapy was to show your work, show your thought process. So they would talk about, well, this is what I was thinking, and I was like, oh my god, they're not wrong. They're actually making
right,
sense. But I don't think that way. I never would have
right,
thought that way, and I'm openly admitting that more than half the times they were probably more accurate than I was. It's just totally different perspective. And then as I was coming up and being a leader in business and organizations, I was questioning, okay, am I listening to the colleagues? Am I listening to my team? Are
mm,
they, giving me their different perspectives and I'm not listening? And as soon as we started doing, like, we did something called a Congress where we get someone from every part of the stakeholders. So not just the leaders, but, in an education group, it's the trainers, it's the curriculum developers. And we just innovated that year like we've never done before. And it was
oh
because
wow,
the diversity beats ability. And it all came down to that my son would say things that I thought was irrational. And after thinking about it, it was completely rational. It was just different than what I was used to.
right. Oh man, that is so cool too, right? And it says something about you too though, Kevin, because at least you stopped to try to recognize what was happening or look and see what was happening. It says a lot about you too, right? Because most people ignore it or they just, they're stuck in their own ways. So that says a lot about your mind and the way you're willing to innovate and think diversely, right? So was that I'm just wondering, when you brought that to your team, right? Was that something that they were pushing back on? Because a lot of people don't always just accept that either. So was that a pushback, or did you find people were excited to try something different and new?
Eventually excited. I wouldn't say pushback, confused quite a bit. They're like,
Yeah.
wait, you want my input? Wait, well, why am I here? Wait, what's happening? Or
Right,
is something
right.
happening? So I think there's a lot of confusion. But once we got into it, everyone was like, wow, this just makes sense. And it just seems so normal and organic. Having said that, you need to have the colleagues that are open. And the word I
Right.
use is
Right.
intellectually humble, right? You need to know that you're not the end all be all know it all, is you need these people. And I just
Mhm.
happen to have a great team that collaborated and fostered like that. But if the culture isn't there, if there's one person that's like, nope, I'm going to still do hierarchical management and I'm not going to listen to people, it's not going to work. So it was
It's not gonna
definitely
work. Yeah.
confusing, but the evidence paid, it spoke for itself. The results.
Yeah. And I guess you're right, because that person who will resist or think about that hierarchical way of doing it will stand out like a sore thumb, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
they stand out, because then you're like, wow, your arrogance and your ego is getting in your way here, but it also, it could take the team down too, right? Because like you said, it's a culture thing, right? And so I always I try to be a servant leader. I have a team of
Mm-hmm.
about 20 under me, and I try to, like just today I was like cleaning and putting things away, and they're just like looking at me. I'm like, hey, I'm in this with you, So I totally understand that, but you also get to see when somebody is opposite of that, right? And
Yes,
it stands out a lot. And then you see a rotating door in their department, and then you start to say, okay, something's wrong here, right? So talk to me
absolutely.
about how you're working that now today. What is the innovation? What is it that you saw coming out? What was that?
Yeah, so for me, I was in the education space. Like at the time, we were going through a change where our organization had to focus less on growth and market share and more on profitability.
Mhm.
So we would be in a situation where we could throw a lot of money and a lot of expenses at building curriculum and courses, didn't necessarily have to be profitable. So the whole pivot was okay, we need to stop. And it kind of parallels what we're seeing with cable and switching to streaming. We had to stop printing. We used to print like 400-page user manuals that
Okay.
basically were paperweights. We had to make them digital and put them online. We had to stop doing classroom training with instructors live in the class. We had to use virtual. We had to use on demand. We had to find innovative ways to come up with different solutions. And we just kept telling people the answer can be outside the box, and it's easier said than done.
Mhm.
But we did a lot of training on what I call like double loop learning, whereas you're not just focusing on the question, but you're actually challenging the question. Is it the right question? So, is it, if my question is, how do we reduce 2 million in expenses? They would challenge, why is it 2 million? Where is it coming from? Instead of just blindly saying, okay, let's move forward with that. And it gave them a piece of the pie, made them feel empowered to work better.
Yeah.
And the innovation just flowed because everyone had a seat at the table. They could see what was in it for them. And even to this day, when we present challenges, we try to balance them out. Here's where we need to go. Here's where we are. And a lot of people think very micro. It's like, okay, well, this decision you just made, it goes against everything what you're saying. And what I've realized is you can't look at the micro level. You have to look at the macro level. Everything is a system. So if I'm going to over rotate on one decision, I'm under rotating on another aspect of it.
Mhm.
But in
Mhm.
in aggregate at the macro, I'm balancing it out and driving towards the goal. And everyone's minds were just like, and I'm like, that's systems thinking. If you all want to learn about it, go back and learn about systems. It's the best thing I ever learned about, in
Right.
university. It's just a different way to think. And then we just got the camaraderie, the culture was there, and it just kept, going forward. It's been awesome since then, and been there 8 years now.
Oh, wow, that's great. So, is this like, have you noticed a bigger retention? Because you said you've been there eight
Absolutely.
years, right? Yeah, I was just gonna ask you. You've been there 8 years. We've been through this horrific thing recently, and a lot of people are, what do they call the big resignation and the quiet
Yep.
quitting and all of that kind of stuff. So how did your company, or how did you deal with that with your team, and making people feel valued or valuable, right, to what they're bringing to the table? What did that look like?
It's a combination of employee engagement, making them feel valuable, making sure we're
Mm,
we're saying, good job, making sure we're doing social hours and things like that. But the other component of it was educating them that what we're going through. So I mentioned a few things, but the larger company was also going through a pivot from selling software perpetually, so like you buy it, to subscription where you rent it.
mhm.
They were basically getting a living MBA in real time. They were learning all of these things about the business that are adjusting. You go to school and you learn about the theory, but you don't really get to apply it. They were, the pitch I made is you're going through all of this. You're going to now be able to go off in 5 or 6 years and have on your resume, you were part of a digital transformation that succeeded, and you don't have to read about it in a textbook. You lived it.
Right,
And I think
right.
people were like, okay, that makes sense. That combined with the fact that the grass isn't always greener on the other side.
Mhm.
Everyone, if the economy is a problem, it's a problem for everyone. It's not
Right,
company
right,
specific. Um, we really got people to stay because they saw, wow, I'm getting an education while
right.
working at the same time.
So what is it that you wanna take with, take your team to the next level? Like, do you start thinking outside of the box now? Like, how do I push the envelope a little more here? What do I do differently here? How do I structure this differently here? Do you think about those kind of things?
We definitely think about structures differently, and I think the important thing is, and it maybe it's common sense to some of the listeners here, but there isn't one right structure. And what's
Right.
even more important is there isn't one right structure forever. So the structure when we were going from revenue at all cost growth to profitability might have been different than the structure if we were just focusing on trying to gain market share, just focusing on just trying to stabilize. And so
Mhm.
we've gone through different in our same organization where it was basically completely flat. It was like 80 direct reports to where it was a much more, top heavy, not top heavy, but higher organization. And we're always adjusting based off what the need is. Sometimes there needs to be, like you said, roll up your sleeves, clean up around that, get your hands on, do the servant
Yeah.
leadership. And then sometimes there's massive change coming. We gotta, set the strategy and focus on the large change management effort. So I think our team's very agile because we've pretty much tried every style in the world, and sometimes they're not perfect. Then we learn from it.
Yeah.
You said it earlier. The key is recognizing when it's not working and then
Mhm.
adjusting instead of just
Mhm.
sitting there knowing it's not working because you're stubborn or your fear that you might make it worse.
And the truth is that stubbornness and ego is a big problem with, a lot of C-suites, things like that, because they've worked their tail off to get there. And so sometimes that ego, can get a little hurt if somebody, questions them or something like that. So let me ask you this. Um, I know I have a lot of C-suite people that listen to this, a lot of people who are entrepreneurs running their own businesses, CEOs, the whole thing. What do you think is like one of the key things you can tell them about, like the mindset, right? That growth mindset that you talk about, and the shifting. And the reason I'm asking that is because I think most of us who are entrepreneurs and big leaders get in our own way. We get in our own way. And lots
100%
of
agree.
times, right? A lot of times somebody else will have a great idea and we won't even see it because we're in our own way. So, what do you think is it like? Was that hard for you to like sit there and pull the team in and, say this is what, I want to listen to all of you guys. Was that hard to like, I guess, step aside or put your ego to the side?
It wasn't for me, luckily, because I think I just had that innate growth mindset that I know I don't know everything, and I'm very empathetic on my Myers Briggs profile, and I really want to, as servant leader, grab everyone and take them forward. But I agree with you. Most C-suite, I think what I would tell them is it's not luck that you got there. You have a skill, but keep in mind the world changes daily. And
Yeah.
so your skill might not be relevant to the situation we're in.
Yeah.
And someone literally 2 weeks out of college might be more relevant. But if you don't listen to them, it's
Yeah.
it's going to hurt them, it's going to hurt you, it's going to hurt the company. So listening, I guess the summary is listening to people, and it sounds cliche. Admitting you don't know everything is not a weakness; it's a strength,
I
and
love that.
easier said than done. But in reality, just have everyone listening in the C-suite step back and say, "Do I know everything? What's changed in the past 5 years around technology, digital transformation? I can't know everything, so why wouldn't I want to get input from people that come from that angle?" And another thing that we're talking, we tend to think we know everything and not want to get other inputs, but then we tend to hire people that have the same pedigree as us, and it
Yeah.
doesn't lead to diversity and inclusion. It leads to lack of innovation because they have the same idea as you have. I don't want someone that has the same idea as me. I
Yeah.
want someone who's going to productively and politely challenge me, because then I'm going to be better at my job. But that's hard
Yeah.
for people emotionally to accept
Yeah.
that I'm not the master of the universe.
Yeah, and that is a hard one, right? Because I mean, I've definitely spoken to some C-suite people that is one of their challenges, right? Is that I mean, it's nice to say that you want somebody who's going to challenge you, but once they do, you're pissed. Right? Because
Yep.
they challenged you. And that has a lot to do with our ego and our arrogance. And that just you hurt my feelings because you didn't agree with me 100%, and so that's something we have to work on internally. And but that goes back to what you were talking about too, right? With the growth mindset and the innovation and being open-minded and all of that great stuff that we have to do as leaders. We have to do as leaders, right? So, can I ask you about Qlik? What is Qlik, and what is it
Yeah.
really? Yeah,
It's
tell me about
a data and analytics company. So we build software. We help organizations kind of load their data, get it ready for a question that they have to ask of it to find an insight and ultimately make better decisions on. So if it's
that. Oh,
used across different industries, whether it be healthcare, life sciences, sales, and marketing, to look at the data that's relevant to their business, find trends, find insights, and then adjust their strategy accordingly.
oh, okay. All right. So that's great, because if you guys are leading it and you're having this diverse talk and everything, and you're really pushing yourselves as well, that's going to help that company who hires your team, right? Because then it's going to help push them a little bit further along too. So I like that. I like that. So what are some of the things that you are looking to do? Because I know that you're coming onto different podcast. You're talking about the growth mindset, the way to have diversity, to innovation, all of that great stuff. So are you looking to um like expand the mindset of these CEOs and companies? Are you looking to tell people more about your software? Like what is our goal? What's your goal?
Honestly, my goal is to sounds cheesy, but it's to have a world to live in a couple centuries, and we have the answers in the data to do this. But
Mm,
you said it that like there's so many people in the C-suite that don't listen to others, whether intentionally or
mhm.
unintentionally. The downside of that is now you have the people just leaving the universities, and they grow up and as kids, what do we all ask? We all ask why, because we're curious, and that's how we build the mindset. And then we go to school, and then we're in high school, and we ask our teacher why, and they think we're being disobedient. They send us to the principal, and then we go to our job, and then we talk to our leaders in the C-suite, and we challenge, and they don't want to listen to it. We forget how to challenge. We forget how to be
Yeah.
curious. We forget to how to ask questions. And now you have all this automation and machine learning that basically gives us answers that we're not challenging. I fear we're actually moving in the wrong direction. And so my goal is
Yeah.
to make sure everyone's aware humans are needed more than ever. They need to
Hmm.
check these things, but we're not using those skills as much as we should be. And that's going to lead us to, unfortunately, pretty negative consequences, in the
Yeah.
future.
Yeah, I agree with that, Kevin. And it's also this big disconnect, right? With between humans, there's a big disconnect. I think, and maybe I don't want to sound like all doom and gloom, because that's not true either. But it just seems like there's less empathy, less sympathy.
Yep.
People don't really want to hear what you have to say, really. There's a shutdown. And to your point, right? Like if somebody's coming with a different idea, right? Or a different way of thinking, and nobody wants to listen to them. There's a shutdown that happens, right? But now we're talking about other aspects of life, not just work. Now we're talking about relationship
Exactly.
in the home, relationship you with your neighbor, relationship with your children, because everything affects us as human beings, right? I agree with you too. Like when my kids they're adults now, but even as adults, when we're together, it's like all phones off the table, all everything. We're connecting. We're doing this, you know. I'm a coach by trade, so I love to sit down and like really listen to what a person is saying and give eye contact and be a part of that place. And that could be the old school in me too. You know, I'd rather do this than,
Hmm.
than be, thinking about a way to make my life a little easier. Um, and my husband says, "You're old school." Yes, I am. And I kind of like that, you know.
But
I
that's
think
part
we're
of the
losing
problem
it.
is yeah, well, exactly. It's old school, and
Yeah.
that's part of the problem is it shouldn't be old school. It should be mainstream.
Right.
Like you practice listening, but for the people graduating college, going to universities, mm, very few of them, if any, have ever taken a course in listening. But they take courses
Mm-hmm.
on reading and writing. They take courses
Mm-hmm.
on technology, and they know how to code an iPad app, but they don't know how to listen.
Right. It's
And
true.
it's not their fault, right? It's because they don't have to,
It's true.
they don't learn the skill. Listening is a
It's
skill, and
true.
I shouldn't say
It's true.
it's. I'm not being flippant, but they just don't learn the skill of how to stop playing on their iPad. And most people, when they're trying to listen, all they're doing is thinking about how they're going to object to what the person is saying, and they're not really
Yeah.
listening.
Yeah, and I think we lost that too because of, I mean, texting.
Yes.
Like we text people now. We don't even talk to people on the phone anymore. So you don't have to listen, right? You read and then you make your own assumption to the tone of whatever it is you're reading, right? And that just, I think that that's, hindered us. I think it's hindered us, because as like you said in the beginning, like technology may be pushing us in the wrong direction. Not all of it, but a lot of it, right? So
Yes.
what do you think is a way to get us back then? What do you think when you're looking at all of this and you're saying, this is probably going the wrong way, so I'm going to be going on these podcasts, I'm going to be, speaking my mind and trying to pull people back. How do you see that? What is it that you're thinking would shift things?
Yep. So at the organization level, at the leadership level, I am a firm believer everyone should take courses on things like implicit bias. Because at the heart of it, people, if they understand how the brain thinks and how the brain makes decisions and how sometimes it's flawed and we don't see things from different perspectives, we only see things based off
Mhm.
of our perspective,
Our perspective.
they're more open to see it. I talk to organizations, and when I mention bias, well, there's probably 20% of the room that's like, no, that's voodoo, that's magic, that doesn't make sense. I don't have bias, and you know that they're not going to change when that happens. So you have to
Right.
educate and make them aware we have bias, we have assumptions, we don't. It's not
Everybody.
intentional,
Yes.
exactly, and it's not malicious, right? We don't.
Right.
It's not a negative thing to say. It's fact. But it's people think, oh well, I don't because I don't want to stereotype. Well, we all do it unintentionally. The point is
Right.
to bring it to the conscious level and adjust it. So I'm trying. I would like everyone at leadership levels to learn about bias and build programs in their organizations to teach people the soft skills that we kind of stopped learning in like second or third grade, like
That's
active
good.
listening,
That's good.
critical thinking, problem
Mhm.
solving,
Mhm.
this intellectual humility of learning that, okay, if I make a mistake, let me just learn from it and move on. Let me not stick with it.
Yeah.
And I think if we do that, then it helps trickle down. Then obviously at the bottom, in lower schools, we need to teach some of these things as well. And not just teach. My kids learn how to use technology, but they don't know how to think with the technology. It's like, how do
Mhm.
I program Minecraft, not how do I apply it to a business situation, or what is it doing for me, or how do I get insights from it. It's just, how do I
Mhm.
use the tech, not in what situations, and how do I use the insights from it. I think that's a gap
That's
as well.
good. That's good. I think that's necessary too, especially right now, Kevin, because that's I think one of the things I've read the most and have had conversations with people about the most is not being heard at work, not being valued, feeling like I don't feel like working for you, 15 hours a day. You're not doing anything for me type of thing, right? I was shocked actually, especially coming off of the pandemic, within the last year, like speaking to a lot of like um, COOs and CEOs and all that. And I was, and I'm like, so how's it going? Like, I don't want to do this crap no more. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
I'm working like 70-hour weeks. Like, I don't know. And I'm like, we are losing. I mean, not that I think we should all be working 70-hour weeks, but there's something that's missing, right? And I think what you're touching on is probably what that is. It's that is those soft skills that we are just not paying attention to anymore, and that's making us ill. I think, giving us a lot of like mental, challenges. We're not communicating well. People are losing
Mhm.
how to be articulate. Like all of this stuff is happening. So are you like reaching out to like big corporations and stuff to try to bring this into their place of business? Are you trying to infiltrate them in that way?
Yeah, on the side, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what I like to do, these podcasts and write blog
Yeah.
articles about, is trying to
Yeah.
do that. I'm passionate about the soft skills. I know them well. I teach them well, but it's about now getting the masses to see why it's relevant for organizations. So,
Mhm.
if this
Good.
podcast helps or anything else, absolutely. And it doesn't
Mhm.
have to be any training either. It's just they need to take the awareness training wherever they get it. It's fine with me, but it's just about, I think people focus so much on technology. Would use that they just like soft skills. It's soft. I don't need any training on it, and
Right.
they just don't
Right.
prioritize it.
We should not even call them soft skills, honestly. They should
I
be
call
hard
them
skills.
forever skills. So I
Yeah.
say forever skills because no matter what, in college I was computer major and math major, and all the languages I learned, they're already dead. So the shelf life of technology is getting shorter and shorter. But if you learn critical thinking, you always need it forever. So it's, to me, it's a
Right.
forever skill.
Right. You know what I love? I love that you're willing to look at things in a different way too, because it just a curious mind to me is just so beautiful. Like I'll ask a random question when I'm doing these podcasts, but it's because my mind gets so curious. Like, wait, what does
Yep.
that mean? What does that mean? It's a little bit of the ADHD too,
Yeah.
just but I love my ADHD. I'm not ashamed of it. I
It's
didn't
a
get
gift.
diagnosed as a child, but to me it's a gift. Exactly. It's a gift. But I really like what you're doing, and I know that right now, as me and you are talking, I know that the audience does have a lot of C-suites and CEOs and thought leaders and things. I know that because I communicate with my audience, and so I know that what you're talking about is going to hit a nerve to someone out here who's going to go, shoot, I maybe need to listen a little bit more. Maybe I need to communicate a little bit more. Maybe the reason people are leaving my company is because I'm not, or maybe it's because it could be really anything. But I think if we're not aware and we don't start changing our mindset, we're in trouble.
Absolutely.
Even just, today I was talking to one of my team members, and they were saying, I'm a chef by trade and I'm a director of culinary operations, and I have a team of 20 under me. And one of the chefs was making something. I'm like, this is really good. I said, you should do this. And he's like, wow, you really like it? I'm like, yeah. One of the things that I do is I always take their advice, take
Hmm.
their lead. You know what I'm saying? Like if they have a dish they want to try or anything like that, I let them go for it. And they at first are like a little shocked because they're in a kitchen. They're usually told what to do, I'm not
Yep.
like that. I like to learn. I know I don't know everything. So I love learning. And that has really helped me keep my staff with me over 7 years. Right? And so it's been a really great way to learn to be a leader, because at first I used to feel threatened, you know?
Hmm.
And then I learned, Kevin. I learned to stop being a hard ass.
And well, and the two things. So the two takeaways for the C-suite listening. One is like you keep the retentions high. The other
Mhm.
thing is you are probably a better chef now as a
Mhm.
result of hearing all these things and seeing people try things and what failed or not. You're learning and you're increasing your game. So it helps you. It helps with
Yeah.
retention. It's a win-win. But
It's a
yet we still don't do
win-win.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, I wish that we would get over our own selves, like a lot of us, because like I said, I speak to a lot of really brilliant minds, and sometimes I almost feel for them because I don't think they can see past their own nose, you
Yep.
know. So I like what you're doing, and I like that you're going around and going to all these podcasts and really talking about things that people can actually utilize, Kevin, because it's necessary, and especially in such a time as this. Like, I really
Absolutely.
feel like we are in trouble, when it comes to businesses and corporations and all these layoffs and people not wanting to go back to work and all that. And it could be that piece that you're talking about, those soft skills, if somebody would just freaking listen, you know? Like, somebody enters your business and sees something wrong, if you would just listen, you might be able to fix a problem that you didn't even know you had, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
just for the readers too, like I would put listen in air quotes because they're probably saying I do listen, but they
Yeah,
don't.
yeah, yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
yeah.
That's so true. That's so true. Kevin, thank you so much for being on Straight Talk and like talking to all of these leaders that are listening right now, because I know for me anyway, just the conversation with you in these last few minutes, I know I'm going to take some of this with me because I have a big team. I have a big team with a lot of different personalities and some new people coming on, right? But if I'm wrong, and I do a 360 assessment, I have them
Hmm.
assess me, you know and I do that on purpose because I want to know,
Yeah,
right? So when they say to me, well, chef, blah 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 blah, I'm like, you know what, I didn't know I was doing that. We'll start working on that, and I actually have it on my wall and I work on it all the time you
that's
know
awesome.
Yeah, but it wasn't me in the beginning, Kevin, sorry to say. It wasn't me in the beginning. Yeah, it's growth. But thank you.
Exactly.
Yeah. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for opening our eyes to a lot of this stuff, and really just letting us realize that you cannot replace a human with technology. I mean, we have got to connect. We have to. So,
Absolutely.
is there anywhere that people can go and like read anything you have, or follow you, or support you, anything like that?
Yeah, actually, go to my website, just kevinhannigan.com. I linked to a couple of books that are there, blogs or videos, and I have a link
Great.
to LinkedIn. If people just want to ask random questions and see, pass them by me, feel free to connect and ask away.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much for being on, and thank you for like sharing wisdom and knowledge, because that's what I love to do here, is to give my audience something that they can really, transform their thinking on. So thank you for being here today. I appreciate you. Thank
Absolutely.
you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you. Guys, see, I told you I find the best humans on the planet, and Kevin Hannigan is one of them. So I'm going to make sure to link all of his information below because I do want you to connect with him. How intelligent and smart and amazing was that, right? I love that. And Kevin, just so I also have a grandchild. He's 3 years old and he has autism. So I know about the black and white thing, but
Yep.
their minds are absolutely amazing.
It's a gift too.
Absolutely
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah. Yeah. So, guys, thank you guys so much for being here. This is Neena Perez, Straight Talk, No Sugar Added. Make sure that you follow Kevin. Do not miss an opportunity to speak to such a brilliant mind as his. I love you guys. I'll talk to you soon.